And so let's start now. Yes.
Yes. First, let me, in full disclosure, say I'm from the great state of New Jersey.
And so am I.
So,
Where are you from?
Newark.
I'm from Bayonne. Hey, Landsman. Yeah, hi.
We're getting ready to raise the bridge.
Right across the bridge, yeah.
In your earlier remarks, you told the story of the, I cannot recall his name, who became a judge and began to frame I couldn't remember what his name was.
Oh, Lewis Powell, who the right-wing guy, who started this, yeah.
Yes, frame the conversation and the processes for conservatives. Being from New Jersey, obviously we were an early explorer in the Tea Party movement. Some of us could see what was coming, right there. We could see what was coming, but no one in New Jersey at a level where it could be dealt with was doing something. So I emailed, I shall not call the person's name, I emailed someone in Washington who had great influence, and I received a response that was so disappointing to me. The response was, oh, it will go away, that it will go away. And because I said in the email, you need to use your influence to at least start the conversation. So you said, and Democrats did nothing. You're absolutely right, we did nothing. Why do you think that was so?
Because they went to college. But let me explain, let me give you another example just like that with Obama, who is, I have infinite respect for this guy, but there's certain things he doesn't understand because he went to Harvard. Now, and law school. He's a law school professor, so he thinks in terms of the rational actor model, okay? Now, the big thing about it is this. When he was elected, before he took office, he hired a pollster, who I know, and I talked to at the time, and he had the pollster trying to find out what to go into, what policies to put into his health care law. And he tried to get policies that were 60 to 80% popular, and he got a long list of them, you know, no preconditions, et cetera, no caps, you know the list, right, the long list. And that became the health care law, okay? Now, no conservatives ever argued against any of those positions. You never heard a conservative say, yes, there should be preconditions. No, your child shouldn't be put on your insurance when they go to college. You never heard any conservative say that, you know, because they were told not to. What they were told to do was go moral instead. Because this was the facts. Here are the facts. You know, we're going to just answer with the facts and so on. And they said morality trumps facts. They went moral. Two principles, freedom and life. It's a government takeover and death panels. Government takeover, death panels repeated over and over and over. They went to a different part of the brain. There's a part of the brain that has to do with what happens in a medical emergency, what do you have to worry about in your health care plan. There's another part that has to do with general morality. And they took that. Obama kept talking about the facts, the facts, the facts. Democrats love talking about the facts and figures. You heard this morning, we have factivists now, right? Not people who talk about the moral basis of the facts and what they mean. Facts mean nothing unless you say what they mean morally. Facts are important, they're very important. But unless you say what they mean morally, and you use the moral language to express it, you lose. And people, the Democrats who keep saying about the facts, it doesn't work. What Obama did was he kept talking about the facts. Then that summer, Axelrod went on Organizing for America, and he said, oh, hey, by the way, there are 24 things to remember about this thing. You should go out and tell your neighbors these 24 things. But just to make it easier for you, I'm going to put them in 3 groups of 8. You all remember the 3 groups of 8? Nobody remembers the 3 groups of 8. I don't think Axelrod remembers the 3 groups of 8. Nobody could. Any cognitive scientist could tell you nobody's going to remember 3 groups of 8. They didn't have a cognitive scientist in the White House. Not one. They didn't have anybody who knew how people thought. Right? Very important to understand that. That is why they keep losing. That is why they don't understand what the role of language is. The role of language is to change people's brains, because your brains are changing all the time. The other guys have been changing brains for 40 years. You know, sometimes our language is effective, much of the time it is not. Does that help?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like the Republicans create a narrative, and the Democrats are in a constant state of following the same narrative, repeating the nonsense, and you're saying we're not the business majors, you're saying. So if we're going toward morality, what are we supposed to do? Quote scripture at them?
No.
I mean, what? What's
Talk about freedom.
Oh, just talk about freedom.
No, not just freedom.
I'm
Talk
not
about
sure,
the moral issues. Talk about, for example, let's take energy. Why is clean energy important, morally important, and dirty energy should not be used? Why?
Because of law.
Right? You can answer that question. It has to do with health. It has to do with the existence of the earth as we know it. It has to do with weather disasters, climate disasters of the sort we have, with droughts, with all of these things. You can answer that question. As why is clean energy morally important? Nobody in the clean energy business asked that question. I talked yesterday to the renewables industry people. You know, I asked them to go over, you know, to look at what did they put out for their, you know, in their literature for the past 5-6 years. They looked it over, they said, oh, it's the same every year, we tell you the facts, here are the numbers, right? They never mentioned the moral basis of what they were doing, but they were all in it because of that moral basis. The moral basis was unconscious and taken for granted. We, as progressives, often have a moral basis for what we're doing, and we don't say it. My job is to get you to say it. Say what you believe. Say what you believe morally. Say the facts from a moral position. Find a way to do it. If you don't know, give me a call. I'm not that hard to find. Yes?
So there's been this movement over the last 10, 15, almost 20 years now that we've gone from a civil rights movement, and all of a sudden the media after 2008 has turned this into a post-racial movement, a post-racial society. How do you flip the frame for that, one? And two, we've moved from a strong public education-centered country to a prison culture country. How do we reframe that? How do we flip those narratives? Because those narratives are strong. They're becoming more and more resonant, and even Democrats are talking about those narratives and repeating and parroting the narratives that are totally erroneous.
Right. Thank you for your question. First, on the racial issue. This is a racial dignity society. It's not a post-racial society. It's a racial understanding society. It's a racial appreciation society, not a post-racial society. Okay? Cool?
I know that.
You know that. Say it, darn it. Get everybody else to say it. You know that. I know that. Say it. Nobody's saying it. Okay? Same thing on prisons. You know perfectly well that our prison population has gone up, and the people in prisons are often people of color who have drug offenses. And they have drug offenses, they've been brought up in communities where that leads them to take drugs or to sell drugs or whatever. That can be changed. These are not necessarily bad people, violent people, or anything like that. We have these stupid laws, like 3 strikes in California, right? Change those laws to enable our citizens. They are citizens. They are nonviolent. Nonviolent, people who can be, become part of community and in fact have a community, have relatives, have, families, etc. Bring them back and, bring back the idea of bringing them into society, train them for jobs, give them a choice in these things and take away the stigma. Let them vote, not only let them vote, make them vote. Have voting rights in prisons. I mean, the point is that they're citizens. They're us. They're us. Yeah.
One thing I've always been impressed by the right wing is their ability to do sound bites within a day. In Maryland, when we passed the stormwater relief, money, it became the rain tax. When we decided to do some working with our water treatment plants, that was the flush tax. Immediately there was a negative term they used, and the most, Obamacare, at least they tried to change it. But the biggest one was pro-life.
Right.
Immediately, if you were not pro-life, then you were
Against life, right.
So
Right.
this has always bugged me because how we counter it is with volumes and volumes and volumes of words.
Right.
And the right wing just does it in sound bites.
For a good reason. They've been working at it for 40 years. And not only that, they understand how to do it. Right? Now, I spoke to a Senate retreat in 2003 on just this issue, on the issue of pro-life and pro-choice. And I was there with one of the leading feminist linguists, one of our former students, Deborah Tannen, who teaches at Georgetown. And Deborah had pointed out that life is a moral term and choice is a shopping term. Morality beats shopping, right? And Barbara Boxer couldn't get it. What do you mean? It is pro-choice. No. This isn't about just, I decide this. This is about the deepest, identity you have as a man or a woman. You have that ability to control your body. The question is, should men be controlling women's bodies? That's the issue straight on. And notice, with pro-life, if they really cared about life, of course, they would, one, get rid of the death penalty, but two, they would have prenatal care and postnatal care. And they, no, that's your responsibility, not ours, right? We don't care about that. But the point is, one, it's easy to argue against it, but you don't argue against it. What you do is say what it really is. Should men be in control of women's bodies, period?
I'm from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, all of you know who the governor is.
Yeah. By the way, I'm working with Progress, Texas.
Right. On the voter ID law, we recently had a primary about a week ago. And as a city councilman, I got more calls from constituents because of problems with the ID match, my driver's license, and et cetera. And like him, we're nonpartisan, but I know my district. And the majority of those folks that call me with frustrations about voter ID, number one, were not folks who look like me. Most of them were above age 60, and they were Anglo, and they were registered Republicans. The same folks who had endorsed voter ID are now, since they have been personally impacted, okay? So we've started some efforts working with our city officials and others in a nonpartisan way, okay? Because our constituents are raising issues now, and our state representatives who pass that law are having to face our constituents because it has become a nonpartisan issue because it's affecting me. So and too often we don't get that because voter ID nationwide, that's the stopper. So those folks,
Yeah.
capitalize on those folks.
Notice the strict father in this says you have to be disciplined in order to vote. You have to be, it shows your merit if you go and do the effort to vote. Rather, it's the opposite. We are most free when most people vote. We want to make it easy because there are all kinds of blocks having to do with age, having to do with working many jobs, having lots of kids, whatever. There are a lot and having to stand in long lines. You should make it as easy to vote as possible. You should have voting rights laws everywhere, but not just voting rights. I mean, voting responsibilities law. And in fact, you should find people who don't vote. You should make it not only easy, but make it profitable for the state. If you don't, everybody, you should make it like easy for people to vote because you are most free when most people vote. Why? Because democracy is about people who care about each other and provide public resources, and don't say the word the government. It's people who provide all these things.
I think we have time for 2 more questions.
Here are 2.
We got 2 right there.
I have a question for you. I really want to thank you for your remarks. The session is really, really interesting. And, I'm not as smart as most of you are in the room.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
But you're taller.
So, as a linguist, I mean, it seems like what I've heard you say, you've sort of spoken a lot of dichotomies, with black and white, not black and white, just, it's like either yes or no. So,
Biconceptual, not dichotomy.
Yeah, okay. Biconceptual. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. Conservative, progressive, sort of same words, different moral frames. So it's kind of as though you're saying, and all thought is physical, thoughts are physical, frames are physical. So, are you saying that there's no middle ground when you're communicating? There is no middle ground. Either it's one way or the other. You define it. There is no such thing as moderate or middle ground. It's either one way or the other.
There is no ideology of the moderate. It is not the case that all moderate conservatives and moderate progressives have the same ideas. They don't. There's no such thing. There is no middle. But,
In communication.
right, now there are plenty of personal issues where people come together as human beings. And you want to find those, like, inability to register if you're, over 80 and you don't know, how to do the voter ID thing. That can happen. That's a common human issue. You have common human issues, right? You want to find the common human issues that don't engage those things, if you can.
So, and everything's physical. So to the human body, to the brain,
Mm-hmm.
there's no real middle there. It's sort of one
There's
way or
no
the other.
middle. There's no middle, but there are cases where, first of all, both of these systems are complicated, and there are cases that stand outside the system. Cases where look, I was raised in a rooming house near a Navy base. We were very poor. My mother ran a rooming house, and I could go into that. But we had lots of sailors who were from around the country, and many of them were political conservatives. They were great. We loved them. We didn't argue about politics because we didn't have the same politics. Other than that, they're great folks. And I learned a lot by talking to them, finding out what their background was, etc. You talk to people, as anybody who is a municipal official knows. Thank you.
George Lakoff, thank you so much.